Hello everyone and welcome to another video in timeline transformation. And I promised you I was going to redo the video on abandonment and getting over your exes. I spoke with the client that I had who I worked with, and I was able to get their permission in order to share a lot more of the story so that you understand the full breadth of what is possible, and how you can overcome these things. And the client was um, very willing to divulge more details so that I could help share this story to help more people. So I want to just kind of go over the background of what is abandonment. So, if you've ever experienced abandonment, you know what that feels like. And if you haven't, essentially you're with someone, maybe that it's a parent, maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a friend, and then suddenly you're left behind. And then what happens is your mind starts to play these games over time because it's happened once. So every time that you get into a new relationship or a new engagement or something like that, there's this constant fear of, what if it doesn't work out? What if this person leaves me too? There's this constant fear, this paranoia about other people leaving you. It can lead to, traits of people pleasing, attention seeking, needing validation from your significant other in relationships. So, this is very common, especially with women who've had abandonment issues. Um, they can be very attention seeking in their next relationship. For men, if they've gone through abandonment, they can become very needy, very codependent. These are things that happen. So, if anybody has experienced abandonment in their past, it can lead to overattachment, codependency, neediness, lack of self confidence in general. And it can even lead to habits and behaviors that are just not healthy, such as obsessions, um, stalking, things like that, right? So, if you've worked with me, or maybe you're new to this group, or maybe you're new to working with me, or any of the group calls we've had, there's a tool that I use called anchoring. This is from neuro linguistic programming. And essentially, what it is you are seeing the linkages that happen within the mind. And your mind makes these linkages and these connections all the time. So, something might trigger or activate a certain thought, feeling, or belief. So, I've given the example before of, when I was young, I remember every single time I would go to my aunt's house, she would prepare this fresh dish of beef mutton curry, and it just had this beautiful aroma. And every time I would go, I would get so excited to have her food. And every time I would go, I would get so excited, I would be so happy, and I would dig into the meal, and I just felt so much love, so much compassion, so much happiness. And so that aroma of mutton curry, that aroma of beef curry, that always kicks off this feeling of love, appreciation, happiness within me. And it's very subconscious. I'm not consciously enacting that. That's just what's happening in the background. So I need everyone to understand that this happens to all of us unconsciously all the time. We're constantly making anchors, right? Maybe there was a certain perfume that your girlfriend used to use when she would kiss you. And so every time you smell that perfume, it brings up a certain sense of longingness or love, right? Maybe a certain guy that you were in a relationship with, he used to wear a certain cologne, and it brings up and stirs up all these emotions, right? Um, if you're thinking about how anchors work, you can also think about how, um, what was the first song that was your song in a relationship, right? Like, what was the first song you enjoyed during your first kiss in life? You could also see how objects can be anchors too, right? So maybe you've had a hard, long day at work and you just need a good old TV show and a glass of wine that helps you unwind for the day. So when you see that glass and it's filled with wine, you just feel a sense of peace and calm, and you know that things are going to be okay. Things are going to get better, right? So things in our lives can get anchored to certain thoughts, feelings, or beliefs, right? So just like a glass of wine can help people unwind, that's anchoring with a sense of peace and relaxation, right? Um, there might be certain meals that put you in a state of pleasure or happiness. Everybody has that quote unquote guilty pleasure. And when they're eating that food, it kind of, helps them um, like get through certain states of mind that they're in, right? That could be a whole nother conversation around food psychology. I'm willing to do another video on that at some point if you'd like. But I want to talk about this story of abandonment and how anchors work, right? So I talked with this client, and he's a guy, and he was able to share a lot of details that he said is okay to share here. I'm not breaking any confidentiality here. I'm totally respecting his confidentiality. And so I asked him, what was the situation like before? Right? So tell me what the situation was like for you before we did any hypnotherapy. And he told me this. He said, I was sick and desperate and tired of being miserable. I was desperate. Everyone else was having a normal life after breakups. Meanwhile, I fell in this abyss. I was sick and tired. 10 years of suffering. I was seeking a way out. So then I asked him, so after our hypnotherapy session, which was only one day, it was an intensive though. We did several instances of going in and out of trance, but it was one day intensive. And I asked him, what was that like after? And this is what he told me. There's no more love goggles. I don't see her the way that most people see their exes. It totally changed my life. I get my free time back, and now I have all my time back. And so I asked him, how was this effective for you? And he said hypnotherapy was the key to all of these results. So we're going to go into the story of this man's life, and you'll start to see how anchoring was either working for him or against him, and how you can use this to reclaim your power from exes, right? We don't want to be overly attached and have thoughts of our exes if they're no longer in our lives, right? We want to have happy thoughts of them, but we also don't want to be obsessed. There's a tendency in the mind to play games, to play tricks, to let the mind run wild, right? And if you've had certain things in your past, like abandonment or rejection, it can amplify those things. So this was the story. So this young man, he felt abandoned at a very early age in his life by his parents. And during this time, he would get watched over by another family, and there was an older woman there who would watch over him, and he started to develop an attraction for this woman, and he was about 14 years of age, and he just found this woman so beautiful, and he was so attracted to this woman, and he decided as a young boy that he was going to make an advance towards this woman, and she reciprocated his attraction. And so they shared a kiss, and as time would progress, every time that he would be alone with this woman, they would share intimacy like this. And for a long time, this was hidden and shame-filled part of his life for many years, because this would have to be kept under wraps. This older woman was very attractive to him in a time when he had felt abandonment from his parents, so no maternal love, and so it was displaced on this older woman. And to him, this older woman allowed him to feel a sense of innocence, comfort, and safety in spite of the pain of abandonment. So, like I said, this 14-year-old boy makes an advance on this older woman and they share an intimate moment. She reciprocated, and this became, what I would call forbidden love, right? So it's a love that is forbidden in the eyes of society, but it's still there, right? And he even described it as heaven, a time when things were just easier. And he even mentioned to me that a young person is always going to feel at fault for these things in their life, right? So as the young boy grew older, he began to mature, and the attraction he felt for this woman got displaced on that woman's daughter, who was also around his age. And now he had never seen the daughter in a way where he was interested romantically, and yet somehow now all of those feelings got displaced onto her. Notice the power of anchoring in the story, right? So the boy initially had feelings of abandonment. There's an older woman in his life that he expresses intimacy towards. She reciprocates. This forbidden love now heals part of the pain. It helps him cope with the pain of abandonment. This now, over time, as he's growing older, he starts to see this older woman's daughter as more attractive, and so he starts to have feelings for her, and the feelings get displaced onto her. And so it's moving from one person to the next. But notice, all it is are thoughts and feelings. It's just getting displaced from one place to the other, right? Now, over time, he started to be in a relationship with this woman's daughter, and it was a secret relationship. And yet, due to their culture, the two people got betrothed to be married to different people, respectively. So they knew that their secret relationship between the man and that woman's daughter would have to come to an end, because now they're betrothed to somebody else. They're each betrothed to somebody else. And then this is what the man confided in me. He told me that this felt like an abyss to him. He could not stop thinking about this woman that he was meant to be with. That's that longing sensation, that longing feeling that he was meant to be with this woman, and yet it was not meant to be, unfortunately, right? This is what many romance novels might call this unrequited love, right? Both of these people moved on over time. They got married. They have families. But this man told me, I just want out of the abyss. And for 10 years, he couldn't move his mind past this woman that got away, the daughter that was his age, right? They couldn't move his mind past this woman and the relationship that could have been. He couldn't move it past the backstory with the mother and him being 14 years old. And he couldn't move his mind past the depth of abandonment. So using the power of hypnotherapy, he discovered the root cause of all these problems. And this is what he said. It had nothing to do with the other person. It had everything to do with my issues. So what we did next was what I'm calling a reverse anchor. Again, I don't know that this is a formal technique in neurolinguistic programming. Maybe it exists, maybe other people do it. But essentially what we did was we went through a state of hypnotic trance, right? You're just getting the mind into a deep, relaxed state of mind where it can access the unconscious, the store banks of all your memories, the store banks of all your thoughts, your beliefs, all the things you do on autopilot, right? All those autopilot generated feelings. Just like how when my aunt makes mutton curry, I feel happy, right? Why do I feel happy? Is there anything that mutton curry is doing for me? Not exactly, but I have memories associated with it. I have so many instances associated with happiness, right? And that's why it stirs up something from me unconsciously. I'm not having to choose it. I'm not having to do anything about it. It just happens, right? So for this man, what we did was we went back to those originating incidences. And instead, what we did was we exchanged the love energy that was deposited into those people and returned it back to the man. And any love energy that those women had deposited into him, we returned it back to them. Now, this is the power of imagery, specifically with hypnosis and hypnotherapy, right? It can be very therapeutic. Your mind thinks in pictures, especially in the subconscious mind. And when you use pictures to heal, it can shift things in ways that other modalities cannot. So we returned that feeling of love, and we returned the other feeling of love, right? And we sent these people off in a place of closure. We gave this man closure for all of the people involved in this hypnotherapy trance. And now that this was all done, we returned the love back to the rightful owners. But then now that it's all done, you have to remember that you need to replace something, right? So there's a phrase that they say when you're trying to break an addiction, right? So when I'm trying to help people break a habit like smoking or something like that, or an addiction, in order to break a habit, you need to replace a habit. So he has a habit associated with that abandonment pain that was associated with all these feelings of sorrow, this obsession, all of these things, right? So we needed to replace something with it. So I asked him, what is a resource state that you would feel good about having all the time whenever these old thoughts tried to resurface? And so he picked something very interesting and very powerful, which was indifference, positive indifference. He wanted this positive resource state of indifference, so that if he's ever around somebody again, or if he's ever feeling abandonment again, or feeling lack of love again, he'll just feel positively indifferent, just very carefree, right? And I specifically asked him, if you ever run into this woman ever again, what type of feeling do you want to have? And he mentioned positive indifference again. And he said, I just really want to ramp that up, right? So here's what happened next. We did the trance work. We did the hypnotherapy work on and off, on and off, on and off, right? And I did this was an intensive I did one day, a couple hours. Immediately after the trance, I take this man out of the trance, and I noticed physically there was an age regression on his face. His face had age regressed, and I told him, you look totally different. You look like you just got years back on your life. You need to go look into a mirror. He looked in the mirror and he was super happy, super excited. He just had this positivity about his whole life. He was just so excited. And he was just asking me all these questions, like what's going to happen tonight? And are the changes going to be permanent? Are they going to stick? Like, what's going to happen? And I told him exactly how this is going to work. You're going to go to sleep by the time you get back home. You're going to go to sleep. Your mind's going to be rewiring for all the changes that we installed. All the things that we took out are gone permanently. All the things that we put in are there permanently. And it's just a matter of paying attention to how things are changing. Because when you notice that when you notice that the way you look at things, when that changes, when the way you look at things changes, the things start to change for you in your entirety of life. And you notice this. And so he also said that, and I noticed this too, and we both hung out with other people that day, and other people that same day commented about how there's a certain glow about this man too. And then he even commented that the energy is different. And every time he sees this woman, right, the one that got away, the one that was meant to be, he said that it gets better and better and better. There's no awkwardness. There's no strangeness anymore. And for 10 years, that was not the case. He said there's no feelings of obsession. There's no feelings of longing or regret or sorrow or, just pondering over what never was. And he told me this. He said, make sure you tell your clients, I I didn't know how to occupy my time before, and I was miserable. Now it's easy. I'm not reverting back. There is no more fantasy love. There is no more love goggles. And he felt so what one thing that he said is that, as after he got out of the trance and after he went back home and he's going back to his day life, he told me that one of the things that became a little bit tricky for him was that he got so much time back. He got all his time back. His mind used to have an obsession, just longing and thinking about this woman. And he had to get clear for himself. What do I think about now? What am I going to think about now? What am I going to use to occupy my time? How do I occupy all this space and free time now? How do I use that time to be more productive? And he told me for a while he actually had trouble adjusting to all this newfound freedom because he just got all of his life back and now he doesn't know what to do with it, because it's almost like he got 10 years of his life back and now he's trying to figure out, what do I do with all this time? And he's told me that since then his relationship with his spouse improved dramatically, and there's so much more responsibilities on his plate, and that the stage in life that he's at now, he said that this had to have been a godsend kind of thing, because if he was going through the other events that are going on in his life now, he would not have been able to handle it. But because he went through the hypnotherapy at that time that he met with me, he was able to heal. He was able to change things. He was able to shift things. He was able to step into things because of this positive indifference. He was able to get more things done for his family. And now, during other stages of life, he is now even more resourceful. So this is the power of anchoring, and this is the power of getting over your exes. I really want to encourage you, if you have a problem with getting over an ex, it really could be as simple as unlinking the linkages that are in the mind, right? Those songs, those music, those memories, just unlinking them. And once you unlink them, who has all the power back? It's you. Once you have all the power back, your life is yours to determine. And this is a tool that I use when I feel like I'm getting too attached to certain people. This is a tool that I use when I feel like I'm getting way too obsessed with work or way too obsessed with this. This is a tool you can use. Reverse anchoring works the same way. You can do the same thing if you have an addiction. You can use the same thing if you have certain problems that you keep facing, or certain thoughts keep recurring. Maybe you're starting to feel rejection too much and the fear of rejection gets in the way. Maybe there are thoughts of obsessions. This is how you deal with it. You go into the mind and you deal with it at a deep core level. You get through to the root cause and you heal those things. You heal those things. You put everything back into place where it was meant to be. This is the entirety of the process of rewiring. And I hope this video has been a blessing to you. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you're going through this, or maybe this video inspired you or helped you in some way, please leave feedback or comments. Feel free to message me. Thanks and have a great one.